everybody. From the floor of Rapid 2023 in Chicago, I am sitting here with the CEO and co-founder of Intrepid Automation, Mr. Ben Wynne. Ben, welcome to Game Day. Very excited to just be meeting you, one of our newest members at America Makes.
It's an honor to be here, thank you.
Thank you. So this is such an exciting time for Intrepid Automation and what you guys are doing and the technology that you're bringing forth. I'm wondering if you would let us know, share with us a little bit about what you're working on right now.
Absolutely. The main focus of Intrepid Automation is really to bring manufacturing back to the US. The core team, the founding team, some of the most talented people I've ever worked with, we've done a lot of manufacturing overseas at previous roles, previous jobs, and we saw Intrepid and new technology like additive manufacturing as a way to kind of bring that back, pay penance almost for doing that overseas, yeah. and really enabling new things to happen faster using new technology.
That's really cool. So are you focused primarily on sort of automating different processes, or is it additive as a service? How are you, what's your system like?
Absolutely. We're not focusing on being a print service provider, but we're focused on essentially starting with the customer's needs.
Okay.
And our focus is industrial, it's high volume production, and so we're focusing on very specific fields of use, such as dental, such as investment casting, and using that as a vehicle to drive adoption away from conventional tooling towards 3D printing, faster time to market, doing more with less, that kind of stuff.
Okay. So I know you can't tell me the magic sauce, but you can tell me your sort of the mix, the way you're mixing it up.
So it's really about being multidisciplinary. And so, we're pulling from our experience as people that have done manufacturing for large Fortune 50 companies, learning from those previous projects, and trying to understand how things like labor and stuff like that are so key to manufacturing domestically. Automation is in our name because if you just have a bunch of machines and you need a lot of people and a lot of space, you're not going to be competitive. And so it's key that you take these multiple disciplines, from robotics to material science to 3D printing to software, and you combine them all together to create a holistic solution for customers.
That is a great vision. I appreciate hearing that. Now, you talked about, I'll say you used the workforce word, I guess, and the training needed. Can you describe how you're experiencing that? Because you're integrating a lot of different things.
Absolutely.
So how does that workforce aspect arrive for you?
I think what you're seeing is a benefit to the workforce in a number of ways. People are being used less for menial work that's being handed to robotics, and instead those people are being trained and provided with more important, more kind of higher valued positions.
Sure.
So someone that can program a robot, for example, versus a guy replacing the guy that's replaced by the robot. It's a way to kind of elevate the collective and help create not just more jobs, but more high-value jobs in America by bringing manufacturing back.
We know that it's been very difficult to fill various roles, whether that's with new workers or existing incumbent workers. It's just been a challenge for us across the board, and in advanced manufacturing, it's even been said we need more technicians than we need engineers.
Yep.
And I think that what you're talking about is embodying that. So is this essentially a new version of the foundry?
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually we see ourselves as a catalyst for foundries. So partnering old infrastructure in the US still exists.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years old in some cases, with new technology and breathing new life into it. Again, I'll give you an example. Medical implant manufacturing. Over 1 million knee replacements done a year.
Yeah.
But to get these products to market takes about 1.5 years and costs hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital investment, because you're making a tool to make wax parts to cast. Intrepid's technology sits and kind of replaces that, eliminating the need to wait and qualify for these tools to arrive. You can just start producing metal parts today using the same supply chain, same regulatory, and keeping the same people employed.
So how does the digital thread work in that case?
So classically, since 4,000 years ago, since people smushed something together with beeswax, dipped it in some slurry, burnt it out in an oven, and poured metal in. It's really got no better than that. Yes, it's become more finessed.
Right.
It's an incredible technology that makes things that we don't even realize or appreciate today, from aerospace, jet engines, all the way through to commodity things that we don't really worry about.
Isn't it kind of interesting that investment casting, which is the process you're describing, is not changed that much?
Yeah.
I guess it was a really good idea, and we're still rolling with it, right?
Absolutely.
So what you're trying to do is really innovate that whole procedure from beginning to end, right?
Well, the way we saw when we chose to do investment casting as a focus, we looked at a lot of different things, including metal printing. We tried to ask ourselves, what does the future of metal parts look like? And then we kind of analyzed, well, if you're a metal printing company, there's no infrastructure. It's new. You've got to buy a lot of capital equipment.
Yeah.
You've got to train people to use it. And you've got to build that infrastructure domestically. And so when we looked at investment casting, we said, well, could we just act as an enabler and a catalyst for that? Because there's billions of dollars of infrastructure, thousands and thousands of people that are employed. And, oops, sorry. and
So busy.
yeah, so too busy. And it's about an alternative approach versus metal printing. And I think there's benefits to both. And I think really it's a better together play.
Well, I think it's fair to say, and you've hinted at this, but you've been very polite to not say, okay, American foundries need modernization. And I heard this statistic in my work recently that after World War II, there were something like 3,000 foundries in America. I'm just speaking of America.
Sure.
And now we're down to 900. Now, that doesn't give me pause right away, because I'm sure a lot of that was inefficiency. So there's a lot more automation. There's a lot more, consolidations, mergers and acquisitions, because it's dirty, dark, and dangerous to do this work.
I think that's exactly right. Unfortunately, it's not glamorous.
It is not glamorous.
It's dangerous, and it's not glamorous. And I think the biggest issue with this infrastructure that we have that we're on the edge of losing is not investing in it. It's not the kind of industry right now that attracts young talent or tech professionals. With adopting 3D printing in the way that we are, we think that we can breathe new life into it. But there's also the fundamental fact that the average age of a foundry owner is mid-70s. What happens when that generation doesn't have someone to pass it to?
Ben, that's exactly right. So the work that Intrepid is doing right now is really important. The Department of Defense, America Makes, obviously works with them a lot. And one of their key drivers for the moment is modernizing, I'll say castings and forgings, and figuring out where additive fits on the technology side. And so we're in the middle of a process where we're looking at that right now, and the end result of which will be what we're calling a technical roadmap. Because that's kind of what we do at America Makes. We try to forecast what the future ought to look like and has the possibility to look like, basically the adjacent possible.
Absolutely.
And then, find resources to put underneath it to make it a reality. And so it's really gratifying to be sitting here next to somebody who's actually doing it, who's actually taking a technology set, using additive to, I'll say change the business case and the business model for an investment casting operation.
Absolutely.
So when you think about that, the level of investment needed, I say the government's given some. The current administration, through the Department of Defense, is allocated something like 177 million for modernization. I mean, you know how this stuff works. Additive's not going to get all that. Additive will get just a really small piece of that pie, but the important thing is we're actually talking about it. We're not talking about selling off the assets anymore. We're not talking about shipping the equipment to some other remote location. We're actually bringing it back and trying to build new, more modern things. So, Intrepid, clearly you're in the mix here. What do you need to see? What's the demand signal from the industry for you to lean in harder than you already are?
I think there's a chicken or the egg kind of situation, right? And I appreciate
enough.
what America Makes does in creating, realizing a potential future and putting that in front of people is fundamentally what needs to happen here. The ideal in what I do would be to create some sort of showpiece, exemplar foundry of the future built around this new technology. Instead of having to convince existing foundries to adopt a new technology, which they see as risk. I've already bought this equipment years ago. I'm doing it the way Daddy did it. That's a risk to me. I think if you were to ask me what my dream would be, it would be to create a showpiece of a foundry combined with Intrepid's kind of technology, showing what is possible, and then helping to demonstrate and drive its utility into the rest of the established industry.
There's a flag waving in the background here because what you just said is so important, Ben. And I share your vision. I didn't know that when you sat down, but now I do. And that dream's inside of me now, because that is exactly what we would like to see happen. Just helping both modernize the ones that exist and perhaps create a new generation of the digital, digitally based, but also, the kind of foundries that are making the parts and the systems for the future that will attract a whole new generation of talented people who care about the way things are made and doing it right. So I'm going to say thank you for what you're doing. Keep it up. And you're in
San Diego, California.
San Diego, man. Doing this work in San Diego.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's very difficult. Maybe you need to come to the Midwest. I don't know. We love California, but the Midwest is where a lot of this stuff happens. So
Absolutely.
Who knows where we're going to see you next, Ben. But thanks for being a new member of America Makes, and thanks for sharing your story with us. So,
thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, and we're good.